Am I the a-hole for refusing to give my ex-husband and his pregnant mistress any money after our divorce? For years, I thought I was married to a man. Not a perfect man, not even a good one, but a man. Someone with a spine, a sense of responsibility, a life of his own. I was wrong. Painfully, humiliatingly wrong. My husband didn't build anything. I did. The house, the lifestyle, the vacations, the respect people gave him, all of it came from my money, my work, my sacrifices. He wore my success like a tailored suit and convinced the world it was his. And then came her. She appeared quietly at first, a name that came up too often, a colleague who messaged late, a friend whose existence didn't quite make sense. I felt it before I proved it. The shift, the distance, the way he suddenly acted entitled to things he had never earned. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He didn't apologize either. He looked at me with a strange confidence, almost relief, and said the words that cracked something inside me. I'm not happy. I deserve more. More, as if I hadn't given him everything. The divorce was ugly, but not dramatic in the way movies make it. No screaming, no tears from him, just paperwork, cold stares, and his quiet impatience. Like he was already late for the better life he believed was waiting. And she believed it too. I didn't meet her then, but I didn't need to. I could see her through his behavior, the smugness, the way he suddenly walked taller, the way he stopped pretending to care. She thought she had won. She thought she had taken a man with wealth, stability, and status. She thought she had secured her future. What neither of them understood, what they never bothered to ask, was one simple question. Whose money was it, really? The divorce finalized faster than expected. My lawyers were thorough, surgical, silent. I didn't fight loudly. I didn't need to. The truth was already documented in contracts, accounts, and clauses he had never read because he trusted me to handle the boring stuff. He walked away with his pride bruised, but his confidence intact. She walked into his life fully, publicly, triumphantly. They moved in together almost immediately. Photos appeared online, her hand on his chest, captions about new beginnings, comments from people who had no idea what was really happening. She glowed. She smiled like a woman who thought her problems were over. And then she got pregnant. That's when her behavior changed. She stopped being subtle. She started acting entitled. She reached out, indirectly at first, through mutual acquaintances. Little comments floated back to me. She's saying you must be furious. She's saying karma worked in her favor. She's saying she finally has the life you didn't deserve. I said nothing. I watched. Because what she didn't know, what he hadn't told her, because he himself barely understood it, was that the life she fell in love with never belonged to him. And it was already gone. Pregnancy gave her a new kind of confidence. She walked like the world owed her something now, like she had crossed an invisible finish line and secured permanent victory. A man, a baby, a future. That's how she saw it. That's how she bragged about it. People started telling me things I never asked to hear. She's saying the baby will be set for life. She's talking about schools, houses, investments. She says you'll regret letting him go. I smiled every time. Because while she was busy planning a future funded by imaginary wealth, reality was tightening its grip on both of them. She assumed he had assets. She assumed he had savings. She assumed the lifestyle he once lived was his. She didn't know that the apartment they moved into was rented on a short-term lease he could barely afford. She didn't know the car he drove was already overdue on payments. She didn't know his credit score was surviving on fumes. And she definitely didn't know that the divorce settlement left him with exactly what he earned, which was almost nothing. He tried to keep up the illusion at first, bought her small gifts, took her to places that looked expensive but weren't, told her the money was tied up, that investments were in transition, that things would open up soon. Soon became later. Later became excuses. Excuses became irritation. Pregnancy appointments cost money. Prenatal vitamins cost money. Her expectations cost money. And suddenly she started noticing. Why did he hesitate before paying? Why did he flinch when bills arrived? Why was he always stressed, always defensive, always one bad day away from snapping? She didn't blame him at first. She blamed me. She must have taken everything. She probably ruined him financially. She's selfish. I let her believe that. Let her build a villain in her head instead of looking at the parasite sitting beside her. Then came the first real fight. It started over something small, nursery furniture. She wanted something imported, aesthetic, worthy of Instagram. He suggested something cheaper, practical, temporary. She laughed at him. Didn't you say money wasn't an issue? He went quiet. That silence, that was the moment doubt crept in, the moment she realized the math wasn't mathing. The fights got worse, loud, ugly, frequent. She began asking questions he hated answering. How much do you actually have? When will things go back to normal? Why can't we afford this? And that's when he made the mistake that sealed their fate. He told her he was waiting on me, waiting for money, waiting for support, waiting for something, anything, to come from the woman he had divorced and betrayed. She didn't understand at first. Why would she give you money? And for the first time, he had to say it out loud. Because she was the provider. Because she always handled everything. Because, without me, he had nothing. That's when panic replaced confidence in her eyes. Because the life she thought she stole wasn't stolen. It never existed without me. She waited longer than she should have. At first, she told herself it was just stress, pregnancy hormones, temporary setbacks. She convinced herself that every relationship had rough patches and that once the baby arrived, things would magically stabilize. But nothing stabilized. Instead, the cracks widened, bills piled up, appointments were postponed, arguments erupted over things as small as groceries. The man who once played the role of confident provider now snapped at the smallest inconvenience. He slept more, complained more, blamed everyone but himself. And slowly, painfully, she started to understand something terrifying. She wasn't carrying a child into security. She was carrying a child into uncertainty. That's when she did the thing she swore she'd never do. She reached out to me. The message came late at night, polite, carefully worded, almost respectful. She didn't apologize. She didn't acknowledge how she entered my life. Instead, she framed herself as a woman seeking clarity. She asked about the divorce. She asked about finances. She asked, very casually, whether there were arrangements still in place. I read the message twice. Then I smiled. Because this was the moment everything shifted. The moment fantasy collided headfirst with documented truth. I replied calmly, briefly, professionally. I told her there was no shared wealth, no hidden accounts, no ongoing support. I told her every asset I owned was legally mine, before, during, and after the marriage. I told her the divorce settlement reflected his actual contributions. I told her plainly that no one would be receiving a penny from me. And then I added one final sentence. He has always lived off my income. I suggest you plan accordingly. She didn't respond immediately, but I know exactly what happened next. She confronted him, not emotionally, not dramatically. This wasn't about betrayal anymore. It was about survival, about the future of the child she was carrying. She demanded paperwork, statements, proof, and for the first time he had nothing to hide behind. No charm, no confidence, no carefully curated image, just the truth. He wasn't unlucky. He wasn't ruined by divorce. He wasn't a victim. He was what he had always been, a parasite living off my money, borrowing my success, wearing my life like a costume. The fight that followed wasn't loud. It was devastating. The kind of argument where voices drop and words cut deeper, where illusions die in real time. She cried. He deflected. She accused. He blamed me. But something inside her had already shifted. She stopped defending him, stopped posting happy photos, stopped pretending. Because now she knew. The man she thought she won wasn't a prize. He was a liability. The pregnancy stopped feeling magical. It stopped being something she showed off and started being something she carried like a weight. Every kick, every appointment, every sleepless night reminded her of the reality she could no longer escape. She was tied, permanently, to a man who had nothing. And he knew it. That's when his resentment began. At first it was subtle. Comments disguised as jokes, complaints framed as concern. He started talking about pressure and expectations, about how everything had happened too fast. He blamed timing, stress, circumstances. Then the mask slipped. He started counting expenses out loud, started sighing whenever the baby needed something, started snapping at her for being tired, emotional, afraid. She had expected a partner, a provider, a man who would step up once the baby arrived. Instead, she got someone who saw the child as proof of his failure. The apartment grew smaller, quieter, heavy with tension. Conversations turned into interrogations. Plans dissolved into arguments. Love, if it ever existed, was replaced by survival instincts. And somewhere in the middle of all this, she did something she never imagined. She missed me. Not me as a person, but the life she thought she stole. The stability, the certainty, the way things worked when I was there, handling everything he couldn't. She started asking mutual contacts about me, about how I was doing, about whether I seemed affected by the divorce. The answer disappointed her every time. I wasn't struggling. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't waiting. I was thriving. My career expanded. My finances stabilized even further. The energy I once spent carrying an adult man through life was now mine again. Peace replaced chaos. Clarity replaced confusion. And that contrast, that was unbearable for her, because she realized something devastating. I hadn't lost anything. She had. The fights escalated. He accused her of changing. She accused him of lying. He complained about responsibility. She reminded him the baby wasn't optional. One night, in a moment of desperation, she said the thing that finally shattered him. You told me you were successful. And he had no answer, because success borrowed is still theft. And theft collapses the moment the owner walks away. The truth doesn't arrive loudly. It doesn't crash through the door or announce itself with drama. It settles in slowly, quietly, until there's no room left for denial. That's how it happened for her. She stopped fighting him. Not because things improved, but because she finally understood there was nothing left to fight for. The man she chose wasn't misunderstood or unlucky. He was exactly who he had always been. Empty. He began avoiding home, staying out longer, complaining about responsibility while contributing nothing. He spoke about the baby like it was a burden placed on him rather than a life he helped create. And one day, in a moment of bitter clarity, she realized something that hollowed her out. She hadn't taken my husband. She had taken my problem. By then, it was too late. The baby was coming. The future she imagined, money, comfort, admiration, had vanished. There were no safety nets, no inheritance, no ex-wife payout. And there never would be. He tried once to reach out to me, not with apology, not with accountability, with entitlement. He spoke about fairness, about how I was doing well and how helping him would benefit the child, as if my success still belonged to him, as if my responsibility hadn't ended the moment I stopped carrying him through life. I refused, calmly, firmly, legally. That conversation broke him more than any argument ever could. Because in that moment, he understood something irreversible. I was no longer accessible, no longer responsible, no longer available to exploit. She heard about it later. She heard that I had said no without anger, without hesitation, without regret, and that hurt her more than anything. Because she saw what real power looked like, not money, not status, not control, but detachment. I moved on, fully, cleanly, permanently. They stayed behind, tangled in the consequences of choices built on illusion and greed. A relationship founded on betrayal collapsed under reality's weight. And me? I walked forward lighter, stronger, untouched. Because the greatest revenge wasn't watching them suffer. It was realizing I had already won the moment I stopped funding someone else's life. Time did what confrontation never could. It exposed everything. After the baby was born, reality stopped being abstract. Sleepless nights, medical bills, constant responsibility, things that require patience, money, and maturity. Things he never had. He didn't rise to the occasion. He shrank. He complained about the crying, about the cost, about how his life was ruined. He spoke about lost freedom, lost opportunities. Never once about love, never once about responsibility. And she finally saw him clearly. Not as the charming man who promised stability, not as the confident figure she defended so fiercely, but as a grown man who had survived by attaching himself to stronger women and draining them dry. She tried to make it work. She really did. Because once a child is involved, hope becomes stubborn. But hope cannot replace effort, and love cannot fix entitlement. They began living separate lives under the same roof. She grew quieter, harder, more cautious. She started budgeting in ways she never imagined. She stopped dreaming big and started planning small. Daycare, rent, survival. Meanwhile, I kept rising. Not loudly, not to prove anything, just naturally, because nothing was holding me back anymore. My work flourished. My confidence returned. I slept peacefully. I laughed without tension. People noticed. Mutual acquaintances began connecting the dots. Slowly the narrative shifted. The divorce no longer looked like abandonment. It looked like escape. And then came the final unspoken realization, one she never said out loud, but I know she felt. If he had truly been successful, if the money had truly been his, if the life had truly been real, I would have been the one begging. But I wasn't. She never reached out again. Not for money, not for help, not even for closure, because some truths are too heavy to speak once you finally accept them. And him? He faded. From ambition, from relevance, from the illusion he once lived inside. As for me, I didn't win in the way people imagine. I didn't get revenge. I got freedom. And sometimes that's the most devastating ending of all. There's a moment after everything collapses when the noise finally stops. No more arguments, no more accusations, no more pretending. That's when consequences begin to echo. They didn't break up dramatically. There was no explosive ending, no public confession, no satisfying apology tour. Their relationship didn't end. It expired. Like something that had been rotting quietly for a long time, it simply became impossible to ignore. He grew smaller with every passing month. Job hopping, excuses, grand ideas that never turned into action. He talked about starting over, but expected someone else to fund it. He spoke about being misunderstood, unlucky, betrayed by circumstances, anything except the truth. That truth followed him everywhere. Because when a parasite loses its host, it doesn't suddenly learn how to survive. She changed too, but not in the way she imagined she would when she first took him from me. She became sharper, less trusting, tired in a way sleep couldn't fix. Motherhood forced her into responsibility before she had fully processed the life she chose. Love didn't save her. Reality educated her. And sometimes late at night when the baby was asleep and the apartment was quiet, she would replay the story she once told herself, how she thought she had won. How she thought I was the foolish woman being left behind. How confident she was that the hardest part was over. Now she understood something brutal. The hardest part doesn't come when someone leaves you. It comes when you realize why they stayed in the first place. As for me, I became something I never was before. Untouchable. Not emotionally closed, not bitter. Just unreachable to people who only know how to take. I rebuilt my boundaries the way I rebuilt my life. Carefully, intentionally, without guilt. I no longer explained myself. I no longer overgave. I no longer mistook dependence for love. People sometimes ask if I feel sorry for her. The answer is complicated. I don't celebrate her pain, but I don't carry it either. Because I already paid my price, years ago, by supporting a man who never stood on his own. She's paying hers now. And the difference between us is simple. I walked away before it cost me my future. She walked in thinking someone else's life was hers to claim. It never was, and it never will be.